A majority of suicides are due to personal reasons, including depression, mental health issues, trauma, financial difficulties, and failed relationships. But in a very small number of cases, suicide, as in the case of suicide bombings, is driven due to terror-related ideologies or even as a strategy of warfare between nations. The Taliban, which has managed to storm back to power in Kabul just last week, paraded its suicide bombers at an undisclosed location in Afghanistan. The suicide bombers wore explosive vests, wielded rocket launchers, carried the white flag of the Taliban, and were referred to as the Martyrdom Seekers Squadron. Interestingly, the 23-year-old son of Habibatullah Akhundzada, the present supreme leader of the Taliban, killed himself in a suicide attack when he drove an explosive-laden truck into an Afghan military base. Even though Akhundzada, as the supreme leader of the Taliban, could have pulled his son out of the suicide bombing squad, but he chose not to. In recent memory, the most high-profile suicide attack happened on 9/11 in the United States of America, when 19 al-Qaeda terrorists hijacked 4 commercial planes mid-flight and rammed into the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. But the suicide killings have occurred throughout history, often as a part of military campaigns and more recently as a part of terror campaigns. But the frequency of suicide terror attacks has increased since 1980. A total of 4,814 suicide attacks have been carried out from 1981 until 2015, predominantly in over 40 countries, resulting in the death of over 45,000 people. The rate of global suicide attacks in the 1980s was 3 per year, which increased to 1 per month in the 1990s. But from 2001 until 2015, 1 terror attack has been reported every week for some part of the world. Suicide attacks have been described as a type of psychological warfare to instill fear in the minds of common public by diminishing the space where people can feel safe. The term suicide bombings appeared for the first time in a New York Times article in the 1940s to describe German tactics in the Second World War. And the kamikaze pilots of Japan, who resorted to carrying out deliberate suicidal crashes into enemy targets under military orders. An estimated 3,000 kamikaze attacks were made, and over 50 Allied warships were sunk as a result. One of the most iconic images of a suicide committed for a political cause was in 1963 in Vietnam. A Buddhist monk calmly set himself on fire in Saigon in protest against the South Vietnamese government that had been propped up by the Americans. From the 1980s, suicide bombings have increasingly been associated with Islamist groups such as Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, and Al-Qaeda, who claim to be fighting jihad. From Palestine to Lebanon, and to later Afghanistan and Iraq, suicide bombings by hardline Islamist terror groups have witnessed a sharp rise. Even India has been a victim of repeated suicide bombings by terror networks that operate from across the border in Pakistan. The Pulwama attack of 2019, in which 40 Indian security personnel were killed, was the most recent high-profile suicide bombing in India.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.